Story 1. Toronto Marquis Patterson was born on October 17, 1977, in Dallas, Texas. His mother was only 16 or 17 years old when she gave birth to him. Toronto never knew his father. His father left before Toronto was born. Toronto was raised mostly by his mother, Patricia Patterson. His grandmother, Mary Patterson, also helped take care of him. The family lived in a neighborhood called Dixon in Dallas. This neighborhood had a lot of drug use, drug sales, gambling, fights, and parties. Many homes in Dixon were run by single mothers. There were very few good male role models for boys growing up there. When Toronto was a young child, he was a good student. He made good grades and was even placed on the honor roll at school. His mother once bought him a small library of books when he was 3 years old. But his home life was not stable. His mother had trouble keeping a job. She changed jobs often. Toronto's mother was short-tempered and easily upset. She would beat Toronto when she was frustrated. She used extension cords, sticks, or anything she could find. On one occasion, Toronto and some friends accidentally set fire to an abandoned house. His mother found a stick as long as a yardstick and as thick as a club. She beat him with it until he had knots all over his body. He believed she may have broken his ankle that day. When Toronto was about 9 years old, his mother became pregnant again. She continued to drink alcohol and use marijuana during the pregnancy. His sister, Kenesha, was born premature. She had a serious brain defect. Doctors did not expect her to live long. Even though Toronto was still a child, he was often left to care for Kenesha by himself. He fed her, changed her diapers, and took care of her medical needs. He loved his sister very much. She often slept in his bed. Kenesha lived for almost 2 years, longer than the doctors had predicted. One night, Kenesha cried all night long. Toronto tried to give her a bottle, but she would not stop crying. He took her to his mother's room and laid her on the bed. The next morning, Toronto went to school. His mother was planning to take Kenesha to the hospital. Later that day, Toronto called home and learned that his sister had died. He was very hurt by her death. He could not cry at the funeral. His cousin told him that he must not have loved Kenesha as much because he was not crying. But Toronto was hurting deeply inside. There was no one to help him deal with his grief. After Kenesha died, Toronto continued to move from school to school because his mother moved often. Still, he kept his grades up. He craved recognition from his mother for his good grades. She would promise to reward him, but she never did. She only threatened to beat him if his grades were not good. She would not buy him new clothes for school. He felt separated from the other students. At the end of his 8th grade year, Toronto got a summer job at the science place in Fair Park. His mother told him he could use his earnings to buy clothes for the next school year. But she borrowed the money from him and never paid it back. When he stopped lending her money, she got angry and started trying to make him pay bills around the house. By the time Toronto started high school in 1992, his mother had a new boyfriend named Calvin Walker. She became pregnant again. She continued to use alcohol and marijuana. When Toronto tried to warn her about the harm to the baby, she threatened to beat him. His mother and Calvin fought often. Sometimes Toronto tried to protect his mother. When his mother was angry at Calvin, she would take it out on Toronto. His mother stopped cooking meals for Toronto. She would cook only for Calvin. Toronto had to eat at friends' houses or cut grass to make money for food. He made an arrangement with his mother that he would not eat at home and he would not have to wash dishes. But when dishes piled up, she demanded he wash them anyway. He refused. She tried to hit him, but he dodged her. Then she threatened to have Calvin beat him. Calvin came into Toronto's room with a belt and tried to whip him. Calvin swung the belt and slung Toronto around the room. But Toronto did not cry or make a sound. Calvin got upset and left. Before walking out the front door, Calvin told Toronto's mother, "You better get this damn boy before I hurt him." After this incident, Toronto's mother kicked him out of the house. Toronto was about 15 years old at this time. His mother also told him he could not go live with his grandmother. So Toronto went to live with his Aunt Helen in Oak Cliff. He made good grades that year and earned an allowance for helping around the house. On weekends he stayed with his grandmother. In January 1993, his mother gave birth to a baby boy named Calvin. She would not let Toronto see his new brother very often. In the summer of 1993, Toronto had no money and no job. School was going to start soon, and he had no clothes or supplies. His cousin, Vernon Stiff, had just gotten out of prison. Vernon was selling drugs. He showed Toronto his money, clothes, and jewelry. Vernon suggested that Toronto could sell drugs to make money for school clothes. Toronto decided that selling drugs was his last resort. He started selling crack cocaine for his cousin. He was 15 years old. Toronto made good money selling drugs. He earned between $500 and $700 a day. He used the money to buy clothes, shoes, and school supplies. When his mother and grandmother found out, they told him to stop. His grandmother let him stay with her, but told him not to bring drugs into her house. His mother tried to make him come back home, but he refused. Toronto never used drugs himself. He never drank alcohol, but he started to openly display his gang membership. He wore his gang colors to school. He carried a beeper. He defied authority and stopped attending his classes. When school authorities took his beeper away, he threatened to kill them. He dropped out of high school during his sophomore year. By the time he was 16, Toronto owned a .38 handgun and a 9mm handgun. One time he fired a gun called a Mac-12 at one of his friends. On September 6, 1994, police stopped Toronto's car for a routine traffic stop. They found a loaded 9mm handgun in the vehicle. He was charged as a juvenile for unlawful possession of a weapon. The case was later dismissed. Around the same age, Toronto sold cocaine to an undercover FBI informant. This happened on March 10th and March 12th, 1994, in an area of Dallas that was heavily occupied by gang members. Toronto also stole money from drug customers on at least 2 occasions. Toronto developed a strong interest in expensive car wheels. He liked chrome wheels and gold wheels. He owned a car that had such expensive wheels. But in April 1995, that car was stolen. Toronto knew that his cousin Vernon Stiff, who was serving time in prison, owned a BMW with expensive wheels. That BMW was stored at the home of Evelyn Stiff, Toronto's great-aunt. Toronto continued to live a transient life. He moved from house to house. At one point, he lived with his girlfriend, Foria Ryder, and her family. He liked living in a normal 2-parent home. His girlfriend became pregnant around the time he was 17. Their daughter was born after Toronto was taken into custody. By the age of 17, Toronto had already been selling drugs for 2 years. He had been in trouble with the law. He had dropped out of school. He had a reputation for liking expensive things, especially gold and chrome car wheels. He had access to guns. He had threatened people with violence. And he had a cousin in prison who owned a BMW with the kind of wheels Toronto wanted. On the morning of June 6, 1995, Toronto Patterson was 17 years old. He was staying at his girlfriend's house in Dallas. Around 10 or 11 in the morning, he left the house. He told his girlfriend that he was going to physical therapy for a back injury. But that was not true. Toronto got into his grandmother's car. He drove to the home of his great-aunt, Evelyn Stiff. Evelyn Stiff lived in Dallas. In her garage, there was a BMW car. The BMW belonged to Vernon Stiff, Toronto's cousin who was in prison. The BMW had expensive chrome and gold wheels. Toronto knew those wheels were there because he had visited before. When Toronto arrived at Evelyn Stiff's house, he went inside. His cousin, Kimberly Brewer, was there. Kimberly was 25 years old. She was Evelyn Stiff's daughter. Kimberly had 2 young daughters. Jennifer was 6 years old. Ollie was 3 years old. Toronto sat and talked with Kimberly for about 15 minutes. Then he left the house. He went to his physical therapy appointment. That part was true. After physical therapy, Toronto did not go home. Instead, he drove back to Evelyn Stiff's house. He brought a .38 caliber revolver with him. He entered the house again. Kimberly Brewer was relaxing in the living room. She was sitting in a recliner chair. Toronto walked up to her. He raised the gun and shot her in the head. She died right there. Then Toronto went to the bedroom where the 2 young girls were. Jennifer was 6 years old. She was watching cartoons on television and playing on the floor. Ollie was 3 years old. She was on the bed in the same room. Toronto stood about 3 feet away from the children. He shot Jennifer in the head. She died on the floor. Then he turned to Ollie. Ollie was scared. She cowered in the corner of the bed. She put her hands over her ears. Toronto stood over her and fired the gun downward. He shot Ollie in the head. She also had bullet wounds to her left hand and her neck. Her injuries showed that she tried to protect herself. All 3 victims were killed by gunshots to the head. After shooting Kimberly, Jennifer, and Ollie, Toronto did not take anything from inside the house. He did not take money, jewelry, or electronics. Instead, he walked to the garage. He looked at the BMW. He wanted the expensive chrome and gold wheels. He tried to remove all 4 wheels, but he could only remove 3 of them. The 4th wheel would not come off. He left it on the car. He put the 3 wheels into his grandmother's car. Toronto drove away from the house. He went back to his girlfriend's house. He arrived around 2 or 3 in the afternoon. He looked scared and out of breath. He immediately changed his clothes. The clothes he had been wearing earlier had tiny spots of blood on them. That blood came from the victims. Toronto told a friend at the house that he had just robbed someone. He said he had shot someone. He said he was trying to steal wheels from that person. He asked for help carrying the 3 wheels into the house. The friend helped him move the wheels into the garage. Later that same afternoon, Toronto took the 3 stolen wheels to a tire shop. The shop was called Acock Tire and Wheel. He tried to sell the wheels to the store manager, but he could not make a deal. The manager did not buy the wheels. So Toronto took the wheels back to his girlfriend's garage. He left them there. That evening, something happened. The police and news crews had arrived at Evelyn Stiff's house. The bodies of Kimberly, Jennifer, and Ollie had been found. Someone had discovered them and called the police. News cameras were filming as the bodies were being carried out of the house. A crowd of people gathered outside to watch. Toronto Patterson and his girlfriend went to the scene. They stood in the crowd. They watched as the bodies of his cousin and her 2 young daughters were removed from the house. Toronto did not go up to comfort his family members. He did not grieve or cry. He simply stood in the background with his girlfriend and watched. The television news crews filmed the scene. The cameras also filmed the crowd of onlookers. Toronto and his girlfriend appeared in that video footage. They did not know that the cameras had captured them watching from the crowd. At this point, the police had arrived at the house. They began to look for evidence. They saw that 3 wheels were missing from the BMW in the garage. They also saw that the victims had been shot in the head. The police did not yet know who had done this, but soon they would start asking questions. Toronto Patterson, meanwhile, had gone back to his girlfriend's house. The stolen wheels were still in the garage. The clothes with the blood spots were still there. And somewhere in the crowd at the crime scene, a camera had recorded his face. The police started their investigation at Evelyn Stiff's house on the evening of June 6, 1995. They saw that 3 wheels were missing from the BMW in the garage. They also saw that the victims had been shot in the head. The police did not yet have a suspect, but they began asking family members questions. Valerie Brewer was Kimberly Brewer's sister. She spoke to the police. She told them that she immediately thought of Toronto Patterson. She knew that Toronto had recently lost his own expensive wheels. She also knew that Toronto knew about the BMW in the garage. She gave his name to the police. The police began to look for Toronto Patterson. They also reviewed the television news footage from the scene. Prosecutors later watched that footage carefully. In the video, they saw Toronto standing in the crowd with his girlfriend. He was watching as the bodies were carried out. He was not crying or grieving. He was just watching. This helped the police focus on him as a suspect. Later that same evening, police officers found Toronto Patterson. They arrested him on murder charges. He was 17 years old. After the arrest, the police searched his grandmother's car. They also searched his girlfriend's house, where Toronto had been staying. In the garage at his girlfriend's house, they found the 3 stolen chrome and gold wheels from the BMW. Toronto's fingerprints were on the wheels. They also found the clothing that Toronto had worn earlier that day. The clothing had tiny spots of blood on it. Forensic testing later showed that the blood came from the victims. The police took Toronto to the station for questioning. On June 7, 1995, a homicide detective named K.W. Wigington interrogated Toronto. Toronto gave 2 written statements. In his first statement, Toronto admitted that he had stolen the wheels, but he said he was not the shooter. He claimed that he had given the wheels to 2 Jamaican men. He said those 2 men were the ones who did the shooting. The detective then confronted Toronto with the facts. The police had already found the wheels at his girlfriend's house. They had found the bloody clothing. The detective told Toronto that the evidence pointed directly at him. After this confrontation, Toronto gave a second written statement. In this second statement, he admitted that he was the one who committed the triple homicide. He apologized for what he had done to his family. He wrote that he could be rehabilitated. At the time of his arrest, Toronto's girlfriend was pregnant. Their daughter was born while Toronto was in custody. He only saw his daughter once, through a glass window in the prison visiting area years later. Toronto was charged with capital murder. The prosecutors decided to try him only for the murder of the 3-year-old girl, Ollie Brown. Under Texas law at that time, killing a child under the age of 6 was a capital offense. This allowed the prosecution to seek the death penalty. Toronto's trial began on November 10, 1995. At the trial, Toronto changed his story again. He recanted his second confession. He testified that he had nothing to do with the shootings. He said his confession had been forced by the police. He went back to the story about the 2 Jamaican men. He claimed the Jamaicans were the real killers. But the prosecutors presented the physical evidence. They showed the jury the stolen wheels with Toronto's fingerprints. They showed the bloody clothing. They showed the video of Toronto watching from the crowd as the bodies were removed. They also showed that Toronto had told his friend that he had shot someone and stolen wheels. The jury found Toronto Patterson guilty of capital murder on November 17, 1995. Then came the punishment phase. The same jury had to decide whether Toronto should receive the death penalty or life in prison. The prosecutors presented evidence about Toronto's past behavior. They showed that he had sold drugs, carried guns, threatened school officials, and belonged to a gang. The defense presented some evidence about his difficult childhood and his age. But the jury answered the required questions in favor of the death penalty. They found that Toronto would be a future danger to society. They found that there were not enough mitigating factors to give him life in prison. On November 20, 1995, the judge sentenced Toronto Patterson to death. He was 18 years old at the time of sentencing. After the trial, Toronto began appealing his conviction and sentence. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals affirmed his conviction in 1999. The United States Supreme Court refused to hear his appeal later that same year. Toronto also filed petitions for habeas corpus relief. These are legal requests to have the conviction reviewed for errors. He filed in state courts and federal courts. All of his appeals were denied. His lawyers argued that executing someone who was 17 at the time of the crime was wrong. They argued that his confession had been coerced. They argued that his trial lawyers had done a poor job. But none of these arguments succeeded in changing his sentence. On August 28, 2002, Toronto Marquis Patterson was scheduled to be executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. He was 24 years old. That evening, he was given his final meal. He asked for 6 pieces of crispy fried chicken, for jalapeno peppers, for buttered buttermilk biscuits, a chef salad with bacon bits, black olives, ham, and Italian dressing, 6 Sprites, and white cake with white icing. Before the execution, the Texas Board of Pardons and Paroles voted 16-1 against commuting his sentence to life in prison. They also voted 17-0 against granting a stay of execution. The United States Supreme Court rejected his final appeal by a vote of 6-3. Toronto was then strapped to the gurney in the death chamber. His final words were, "I am sorry for the pain, sorry for what I caused my friends, family, and loved ones. I feel a great deal of responsibility and guilt for what happened. I should be punished for the crime, but I do not think I should die for a crime I did not commit." He also asked for forgiveness and invited his family to his funeral. Then the lethal injection was started. He was pronounced dead at 6:20 p.m. on August 28, 2002. Kimberly Brewer, Jennifer Brewer, and Ollie Brown never returned home. The 3 stolen wheels were returned to the family. The BMW still had only 3 wheels. Toronto Patterson's daughter grew up without ever really knowing her father. The case closed with no remaining appeals and no further questions about who committed the triple homicide. Story 2. Tony Lee Walker was born on April 15, 1966. The place of his birth is not clearly stated in the public records of his case, but later parts of his life placed him in Texas, mainly in Dallas County and later in Morris County. As a child, Tony grew up in an environment that led him to break the law at a young age. He did not complete his education in a normal way. The records do not give details about his parents or whether he had siblings, but his actions as a young person show that he did not have a stable or law-abiding youth. When Tony was 11 years old, he became involved in a serious crime. On March 21, 1978, he was convicted of first-degree murder in Criminal District Court No. 2 of Dallas County, Texas. The murder happened during a store robbery. Tony was with other people at that time. Someone was killed during that robbery. Because he was part of the group that committed the robbery, he was found guilty of murder even though he was very young. The court sentenced Tony Lee Walker to 5 years in prison for that murder. He was sent to serve his sentence, but he did not serve the full 5 years. He was given early release. On May 8, 1980, he was discharged from prison. He had served a little more than 2 years of his 5-year sentence. He was only 14 years old when he got out of prison. After his release, Tony did not stop breaking the law. He committed 2 separate burglaries of vehicles. For each of these offenses, he was caught and sentenced to probation. Each time he received 6 months of probation. He completed those probation terms without going back to prison. By the early 1990s, Tony Lee Walker was living in Dangerfield, Texas. Dangerfield is a small town in Morris County, in the northeastern part of the state. He was known in the neighborhood. He had acquaintances among the older people who lived near him. He had developed a habit of using crack cocaine. He also drank beer regularly. He did not have a steady job that is mentioned in the records. He spent time with friends who also used drugs. One of his friends was a man named James Cornelius. They would ride together in Cornelius's car. Tony had also married at some point before 1992. His wife is mentioned in later records, but her name is not given. They lived separately at times because of his behavior. In his free time, Tony liked to work with wood. He would make small items like jewelry boxes and clocks. This hobby started later in his life, but it came from an interest he had for a long time. He said that he had always been infatuated with working with wood. Tony Lee Walker was not a stranger to violence. He had already killed once as a child during a robbery. He had spent time in prison, but after his early release in 1980, he had been free for about 12 years. During that time, he had only minor offenses. He lived as an acquaintance to people in Dangerfield, including an elderly couple named Willie Simmons and Virginia Simmons. He knew where they lived. He knew that they sold beer from their home because Dangerfield was a dry community where stores did not sell alcohol. On the night of May 22, 1992, Tony Lee Walker was with his friend James Cornelius. They had crack cocaine. They smoked it together while riding in Cornelius's car. It was late at night, close to midnight. They continued into the early morning of May 23rd. Tony was high on the drug. He wanted more drugs. He also wanted beer. He knew where he could get both if he had money. But he did not have enough money. So he started thinking about how to get what he wanted. On the night of May 22nd, 1992, just before midnight, Tony Lee Walker was in a car with his friend James Cornelius. They had been smoking crack cocaine together. The drug made Tony feel restless and hungry for more. He did not have money to buy more drugs. He also wanted beer. He knew that Willie and Virginia Simmons, an elderly couple who lived nearby, sold beer from their home because Dangerfield had no stores that sold alcohol. So Tony decided to go to the Simmons house. He did not plan the murders at this point. He only wanted beer and money to buy more crack cocaine. James Cornelius let Tony out of the car. Tony started walking toward his own house. But on the way, he changed his direction and walked toward the Simmons house instead. The Simmons house was close to where he was. As he walked, he saw a railroad track. On the track, he found a large piece of wood. It was part of a railroad tie. The piece was about the size of a baseball bat. He picked it up. He did not pick it up to kill anyone yet. He simply picked it up. Tony walked to the Simmons front door. He knocked. Willie Simmons called out from inside, asking who was there. Tony identified himself by his real name. Willie Simmons knew Tony as a neighbor. He opened the door and let Tony inside. Once inside, Tony told Mr. Simmons that he wanted a beer. Mr. Simmons went to the kitchen, got a beer, and brought it to Tony. Tony gave Mr. Simmons 50 cents for the beer. Then Tony left the house. He did not go home. Instead, he walked into the woods near the Simmons property. He drank the beer there. While he was in the woods, he found another piece of wood. It was also a large stick similar to the first one. He now had 2 sticks. He left one of them by the front door of the Simmons house. He held the other stick behind his back. Tony knocked on the front door again. This time, Willie Simmons asked who was there. Tony did not give his real name. He said the name Roger. Virginia Simmons, Willie's wife, came to the door and let Tony inside. She did not know that he was lying about his name. Once inside, Tony saw Willie Simmons standing near the kitchen door. Willie had his back turned to Tony. Tony took the stick he was hiding behind his back. He raised it and hit Willie Simmons on the back of the head. The stick broke from the force of the blow. Tony then hit Willie again with the broken piece. The stick broke again. Tony then grabbed a walking cane that was in the room. He hit Willie Simmons on the head with the cane. The cane also broke. Virginia Simmons saw what was happening. She yelled at Tony, saying something like, "Hey, you want to get shot?" Tony then went to the front door, opened it, and picked up the second stick he had left on the porch. He carried that stick into the bedroom where Virginia had gone. He hit her with the stick. She fell onto the bed. Willie Simmons was still standing, though he was dazed and bleeding from his head. Tony grabbed Willie by the hand and pulled him into the bedroom. He told Willie to lie down on the floor next to the bed. Willie obeyed because he was injured and scared. Tony then looked around the bedroom. He found an electric cord. He used it to tie Willie Simmons' hands and feet. He also used a belt and a foam shoulder sling to make sure Willie could not move. After tying Willie up, Tony turned to Virginia Simmons. He grabbed her and told her to pull her gown up. She was afraid. He then raped her. At the time he raped her, her head was already bleeding from the blow he had given her earlier. After the rape, Tony laid Virginia on the floor near her husband's feet. She was naked and curled up. Tony then stood there and looked at both of them for about 10 minutes. He started thinking. He realized that if he did not kill them, they would call the police. They had seen his face. They knew his name. They could identify him. So he decided to kill them. He picked up a stick or another hard object. He hit Willie Simmons in the head repeatedly. He hit Virginia Simmons in the head repeatedly. He did not stop until they stopped moving. Blood came out of their mouths. Tony watched as both of them gasped for air and then stopped breathing. After he saw that they were dead, Tony went to the kitchen. He opened the refrigerator and took out a beer. He sat down and drank the entire beer. Then he went back to the living room. He dragged Virginia Simmons' body into the living room. Even though she was dead, he tried to have sexual intercourse with her body again. After that, he went back to the kitchen and got another beer. He drank it. Now Tony looked for money. He found Willie Simmons' wallet in the back pocket of Willie's pants. He opened the wallet and took out the money. He counted it. There was about $95. He put the money in his own pocket. Then he looked around the house for items he could sell for more money. He did not find anything he wanted to take. After that, he started cleaning up. He untied Willie Simmons' body. He gathered the electric cord, the belt, the foam sling, the broken sticks, the cane, and the empty beer cans. He put all of these items into a pillowcase. He also tried to wipe his fingerprints off of anything he thought he had touched. Tony was naked at this point. His own clothes were covered in blood. So he found a pair of Willie Simmons' pants and a t-shirt. He put those clothes on. He picked up his bloody clothes. He went to the front door and opened it. He saw that the neighbors were awake because lights were on. He did not want to be seen. So he closed the front door, locked it from inside, and walked out the back door instead. He carried the pillowcase with the evidence and his bloody clothes. He walked to an area behind his own house. He found a hole in the ground. He put the blood-soaked clothes into that hole. He may have also put other items there. Then he covered them or left them there. The next day, May 24th, 1992, the Simmons bodies were found by someone. The police were called. They came to the house. They saw the blood, the broken sticks, the cane, and the bodies. They started asking questions in the neighborhood. Someone told them about Tony Lee Walker. On May 24th, 1992, someone discovered the bodies of Willie and Virginia Simmons inside their home. That person called the police. Officers from Morris County arrived at the house. They saw blood on the floors and walls. They saw broken sticks and a broken cane. They saw the bodies of the elderly couple. They began to look for evidence. The police walked around the neighborhood. They talked to people who lived near the Simmons house. Someone told the officers about Tony Lee Walker. The police learned that Tony lived close by. They also learned that he had been seen near the Simmons house on the night of the murders. The police then went to the area behind Tony's house. They searched the ground. They found a hole. Inside the hole, they found clothes. The clothes were soaked with blood. They collected these clothes as evidence. After finding the bloody clothes, the police confronted Tony Lee Walker. They told him what they had found. They asked him to come with them to the Morris County Courthouse to answer questions. Tony agreed to go. At the courthouse, the police questioned Tony. They showed him the bloody clothes. They asked him what happened. Tony then confessed. He told them everything he had done. He described how he hit Willie Simmons with the stick. He described how he raped Virginia Simmons. He described how he beat them both to death. He described drinking beer and trying to assault the dead body. He described taking the $95 and cleaning up. The police wrote down his confession. After his confession, the police took Tony's clothes and the items from the hole to a crime lab. Scientists tested the blood on his clothes. The blood matched the blood types of Willie and Virginia Simmons. The scientists also found Tony's sperm on Virginia Simmons' body. This forensic evidence supported everything Tony had confessed to. Tony was arrested and charged with capital murder. The state of Texas charged him for the murder of Virginia Simmons. The reason was that he killed her while committing or attempting to commit aggravated sexual assault. That is a capital offense under Texas law. On June 30, 1992, a grand jury indicted Tony Lee Walker. He pleaded not guilty. His trial began later. During the trial, Tony changed his story. He admitted that he was at the crime scene. He admitted that he raped Virginia Simmons. But he said that other men were with him and that those men committed the murders. He said he was not the one who killed them. The prosecution presented the bloody clothes, the blood evidence, the sperm evidence, and Tony's own detailed confession. The evidence showed that Tony was alone. No other men were involved. The jury heard all the facts. On November 15, 1993, the jury found Tony Lee Walker guilty of capital murder. Then the same jury had to decide his punishment. The state also told the jury about Tony's past. They proved that he had been convicted of first-degree murder in 1978 for a store robbery where someone was killed. The jury decided that Tony should receive the death penalty. On November 17, 1993, the court formally sentenced him to death. After his sentence, Tony automatically appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. That court affirmed his conviction and sentence on October 30, 1996. He then asked the United States Supreme Court to review his case. The Supreme Court refused on October 6, 1997. Tony filed a state habeas corpus application on August 4, 1997. The trial court recommended that it be denied. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals denied it on September 30, 1998. He then filed a federal habeas petition in March 1999. The federal district court denied relief on December 8, 2000. He appealed one claim to the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. That court rejected his claim on August 7, 2001. He asked the U.S. Supreme Court again. The court denied his petition on May 20, 2002. On September 10, 2002, Tony Lee Walker was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. His final meal was French fries, 5 pieces of fried chicken, and 3 Dr. Peppers. In a written statement, he said he was sorry and asked the Simmons family to forgive him. On the gurney, he said goodbye to 2 pen pals in Europe, and when speaking of his family, he said nothing. Then he began reciting the Lord's Prayer. He stopped at the words, "Thy kingdom come," and said, "Help me, chaplain." The chaplain continued the prayer as Tony gasped and stopped breathing. A tear rolled down his cheek. He was pronounced dead at 6:16 p.m. The Simmons children were left without their parents, and Tony Lee Walker's life ended with no one from his family watching. Story 3. Michael Joseph Passaro was born in August 1962. He grew up on Long Island, New York. As a child and a young man, he was often alone. He had emotional problems that made it hard for him to make friends or feel close to other people. After he finished school, Passaro joined the United States Navy. He served his time in the military and then left the service. When he returned to regular life, he tried many different jobs. He worked as a taxi driver. He worked as an electrician. He also worked as an ambulance driver and as an emergency medical technician, which is a person who helps sick or hurt people before they get to a hospital. During these years, he struggled with alcohol abuse and drug abuse. He had trouble keeping his life under control. At some point, Passaro met a woman named Donna. They worked together at a hospital. They fell in love and got married. Donna helped Michael with his emotional problems and his drug and alcohol problems. She encouraged him to build a career in medicine. They had no children together because Donna had a miscarriage, which is when a pregnancy ends early and the baby does not survive. One night, Michael and Donna were at their home in New York. Michael was sleeping. Donna was watching television. Then she heard a loud crash outside. A car accident had happened near their house. Donna was a nurse, so she ran outside to help the person in the crashed car. As she tried to help the driver get out of the car, an electrical line fell or struck her. The electricity burned her to death. Donna died that night. Michael Passaro was destroyed by this loss. He fell into a deep depression. He could not think clearly or function normally. He quickly went back to using drugs and alcohol to try to numb his pain. He drifted through life without direction. He lived in New York for a while. Then he moved to Florida. Then he moved back to New York again. Finally, he went to South Carolina and lived with his parents in a town called Myrtle Beach. While living in Myrtle Beach, Passaro met a woman named Karen. Karen ran kidney dialysis centers in Horry County and Georgetown County. A kidney dialysis center is a place where people with kidney problems go for medical treatment. Karen hired Passaro to work for her. Soon after, they started dating. They got married. In 1996, they had a baby girl. They named her Maggie. For a while, Passaro had what he always wanted, a family, a home, and people who loved him. But the marriage did not stay happy. Problems started to grow between Michael and Karen. The marriage soured. In June 1998, Michael and Karen separated. That means they stopped living together as husband and wife. Karen asked for a divorce. She also got a restraining order against Michael. A restraining order is a legal paper that says one person must stay away from another person. After the separation, a family court judge made a temporary order about who would take care of Maggie. The judge said Passaro could have Maggie on weekends. He would pick her up from daycare on Friday. He would return her to daycare on Monday. Then Karen would pick up Maggie on Monday afternoon and keep her until the next Friday. Michael and Karen argued about this arrangement, especially around holidays. During this time, Passaro was being treated for depression by doctors. His mental state was very bad. He slept with a knife next to him. He often thought about stabbing himself. He was very close to his daughter Maggie. He tried very hard to protect her from the divorce, but he felt he was losing control of everything. That is where the story of his early life ends, with Passaro separated from his wife, deeply depressed, holding onto a knife at night, and trying to keep a connection to his young daughter Maggie during his weekend visits. One weekend in November 1998, Michael Passaro picked up his daughter Maggie from daycare as usual. It was a Friday. Under the court order, he was supposed to keep her for the weekend and then return her to daycare on Monday morning. The Monday before Thanksgiving arrived. That day was November 23, 1998. Passaro did not take Maggie to daycare. Instead, he kept her in his white 1995 Ford minivan. She was 2 years old. He strapped her into a child safety seat inside the van. The safety seat was placed in the middle row of seats. Passaro drove the van to a condominium complex called South Bay Lakes in Surfside Beach, South Carolina. This was the place where his estranged wife Karen lived. He parked the van right in front of Karen's condominium. He wanted Karen to see what was about to happen. Before setting the fire, Passaro had prepared a suicide note. He had typed it on paper 3 months earlier. The note had his words written out clearly. In the note, he said that Karen won the war, but it was at the expense of their daughter. He wrote that he hoped Karen would not kill herself because he wanted her to live in pain for the rest of her life. He also wrote that he wanted to be buried with his first wife Donna, whom he called his first and only love. He put this typed note inside the van. Passaro then took a plastic 1-gallon gasoline can. He poured the gasoline onto the floor of the van. He made sure the gasoline was spread near the middle seat, where Maggie was strapped into her child's seat. The gasoline was all over the floor of the vehicle. After pouring the gasoline, Passaro ignited it. He set the van on fire. The flames started near the middle seat. The fire spread quickly because of the gasoline. Maggie was alive when the fire started. She was strapped into her seat and could not get out. The fire burned her. A forensic pathologist later confirmed that she burned to death from the flames inside the car. Passaro had planned to die in the fire as well. He wanted to kill himself along with Maggie, but when the van exploded from the heat and flames, Passaro jumped out of the van. He escaped the burning vehicle. His right arm and the back of his legs had burns. His clothing on those parts was singed, which means the fabric was burned at the edges. But he was alive and conscious. People nearby saw the fire and came to help. A witness named John Watts pulled Passaro away from the van to a grassy area. The witnesses asked Passaro a question. Was anyone else inside the van? Passaro refused to answer them. He stayed silent when they asked if another person was in the burning vehicle. Karen Passaro, Michael's estranged wife, heard the commotion outside her condominium. She came outside. She recognized the white minivan. She knew it was the family van. She demanded to know whether her daughter Maggie was inside the van. But at that moment, no one could give her an answer yet. The fire was still burning. The van was destroyed by the flames. When the fire was finally put out by firefighters, they searched the van to find out what had caused the fire. Inside the melted and charred remains of the vehicle, they found Maggie's body. She was still strapped into her child's safety seat. The plastic gasoline can had also melted into the floor near where she sat. The suicide note was found as well. The edges of the paper were singed by the fire, but parts of the writing could still be read. The crime was complete. Maggie, age 2, was dead. Michael Passaro had set the fire, poured the gasoline, and left his daughter inside to burn. He had escaped the fire himself. He had refused to tell anyone that she was in there. And he had left behind a note explaining that he wanted his estranged wife to suffer for the rest of her life. After the fire was put out, firefighters and police officers searched the scene. They found Maggie's body strapped into her child's safety seat in the middle of the van. The medical examiner later confirmed that she was alive when the fire started and that she died from burns. The police also found the melted plastic gasoline can and the singed suicide note inside the van. These items became evidence. Michael Passaro was still at the scene. He had burns on his right arm and the back of his legs. Paramedics treated him. He was conscious and able to speak. He did not try to run away. The police arrested him at the scene because they had probable cause that he had started the fire. He was taken into custody. The police investigation continued after the arrest. They collected the suicide note as a key piece of evidence. They interviewed witnesses who saw Passaro jump out of the van and refused to answer whether anyone was inside. They also talked to Karen Passaro, who had come outside and recognized the van. The investigation confirmed that Passaro had poured gasoline inside the van and set it on fire while his daughter was strapped in her seat. Passaro was formally charged with murder and first-degree arson. The state of South Carolina announced that it would seek the death penalty. A trial judge held a hearing to determine if Passaro was competent to stand trial. Competent means he understood the charges against him and could help his lawyer. 2 psychiatrists examined him. The judge found him competent. On the day of his arraignment, which is when a defendant enters a plea, Passaro pleaded guilty to both charges. He did this against the advice of his own lawyers. They told him not to plead guilty, but he did it anyway. The judge accepted the plea after determining it was made freely, voluntarily, and with understanding of the consequences. 2 days later, the sentencing hearing began. The judge, Dean Hall, heard evidence from both sides. Prosecutor Greg Hembry presented the suicide note and read it aloud. Karen Passaro testified about how the crime had destroyed her life. A forensic pathologist named Clay Nichols explained that Maggie burned to death while alive. Witnesses described how Passaro jumped from the van and refused to say his daughter was inside. The judge found 3 aggravating circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. An aggravating circumstance is a fact that makes a crime more serious and eligible for the death penalty. The first was physical torture, because Maggie suffered intense pain while burning. The second was that Passaro created a great risk of death to more than one person in a public place using a device hazardous to life. The third was that the victim was a child 11 years or younger. Maggie was 2. The judge also considered mitigating circumstances, which are facts that could reduce punishment. But Passaro waived his right to have the court consider any mitigation. He told his lawyers not to make closing arguments. He made a short statement to the judge about how his first wife's death had devastated him. Then the judge sentenced Michael Passaro to death by lethal injection for the murder charge. He also received a concurrent sentence of 30 years for arson. The sentence was imposed in August 2000. After the sentence, Passaro had an automatic right to appeal. His lawyers filed a notice of appeal. But Passaro personally filed a motion to dismiss his own appeal. He told the court he did not want to fight the sentence. The South Carolina Supreme Court sent the case back to a lower court to determine if Passaro was competent to waive his appeal. A forensic psychiatrist named Dr. Pamela Crawford examined him. She testified that Passaro was competent. He had no major mental illness, only mild depression in the past. 2 different psychiatric experts agreed. Passaro then appeared in person before the 5 justices of the South Carolina Supreme Court in May 2002. He told them he wanted to waive all appeals. He said that death or life in prison were both death sentences to him. He believed he would be reunited in heaven with his daughter Maggie and his first wife Donna. The justices questioned him at length. In July 2002, they unanimously ruled that Passaro was competent and that his decision was knowing and voluntary. They allowed him to waive all appeals. 2 groups tried to stop the execution. The South Carolina Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers and the South Carolina Christian Action Council filed a clemency petition to Governor Jim Hodges. They argued that Passaro was depressed and that his execution would be state-assisted suicide. They asked the governor to change the sentence to life in prison without parole. Governor Hodges rejected the appeal. No South Carolina governor had granted clemency since the death penalty was brought back in 1977. The execution date was set for September 13, 2002. Passaro asked for no special final meal. On that evening at the Broad River Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina, he was taken to the Capital Punishment Facility. His mother, his sister, and 11 other witnesses watched through glass and bars. 2 sisters of Maggie and her grandfather also watched. Passaro smiled. He blew kisses at his family. He told them he loved them and that it was over. He received a lethal injection at 6:15 p.m. and died with his eyes slowly closing. The case ended with Michael Joseph Passaro buried, as he had requested, though it is not recorded if he was buried with Donna. Karen Passaro was left to live with the pain he wished upon her. Maggie's family issued a statement saying they would rather focus on her life than on her father's death, remembering how she loved to ask for strawberry milk by the refrigerator. Michael Passaro became the 28th person executed in South Carolina since 1976, and the 797th person executed in the United States since the death penalty was reinstated. Story 4. Jesse Joe Patrick was born on February 23, 1958. He was a white male. His birthplace was Los Angeles, California. He did not grow up with his birth parents. Instead, he was raised in a foster home. While he lived in that foster home, people who cared for him physically abused him. That means they hit him or hurt his body on purpose. This happened many times when he was a child. Because of the abuse, Jesse did not have a normal, safe childhood. He did not finish much school, but the records do not say exactly what grade he reached. As a young man, he moved from California to Texas. He later found work as a landscaper. That means he cut grass, trimmed bushes, and took care of outdoor spaces for other people. Jesse began to have trouble with the law when he was an adult. On January 6, 1986, he was convicted of aggravated assault in Dallas County, Texas. Aggravated assault means he attacked someone in a serious way, often with a weapon or with the intent to cause great harm. The court did not send him to prison right away. Instead, the judge gave him 8 years of probation. Probation means he could stay out of prison if he followed strict rules and did not commit more crimes. But Jesse did not follow the rules. On July 17, 1986, a judge revoked his probation. That means the judge took away the chance to stay free. Jesse was then sentenced to 4 years in prison for the aggravated assault. He served part of that time. In Texas at that time, prisons were very full, so some inmates were released early. Jesse was let out on parole. Parole means he was allowed to leave prison early, but still had to follow rules and stay under supervision. After he was released, he broke the law again. In May 1987, he was convicted of driving while intoxicated, which is called DWI. That means he drove a car after drinking too much alcohol. The judge gave him 1 year of probation for that offense. By 1989, Jesse was living in a neighborhood called Pleasant Grove, near Dallas, Texas. He lived with his girlfriend. She was a teenager, which means she was between 13 and 19 years old. They also had a baby son together. Jesse did not have a steady job at that time. He often drank alcohol. When he drank, he sometimes became angry or acted without thinking. The neighborhood where he lived was made up of small houses close to each other. 2 doors down from Jesse's house lived an 80-year-old woman named Nina Rutherford Red. She was a white female. Nina lived alone. She was known in the neighborhood as a kind person. Before July 1989, Nina had given Jesse and his girlfriend money sometimes. She also gave them food. She let them come inside her house to use her telephone. She did this because they had a small baby, and she wanted to help them. Jesse's life before July 1989 included violence, prison time, drinking, and trouble with the law. He had been physically abused as a child. He had been convicted of aggravated assault. He had been sent to prison, then released on parole. He had a young girlfriend and a baby. He lived 2 doors away from an elderly woman who had been kind to him. On the night of July 8, 1989, Jesse Joe Patrick was drinking alcohol. He had been drinking for some time. He also tried to rape his own girlfriend that same night. She did not want to, and he did not succeed. After that, he left his house. He walked 2 doors down to the home of Nina Rutherford Red. She was 80 years old and lived alone. The time was late at night or very early in the morning. Jesse went to the side of her house where the bathroom was located. There was a window in the bathroom. He pried the screen loose. That means he used his fingers or a tool to lift the screen away from the window frame. Then he opened the window and climbed inside. Once he was in Nina's house, he began to attack her. He hit her many times. Her face and body were later found covered with bruises. He twisted one of her arms behind her back. He then sexually assaulted her. Later, investigators found sperm inside her body, which showed that a sexual assault had happened. After the sexual assault, Jesse picked up a butcher knife. The knife had a wooden handle and a square tip. It was rusty. The knife belonged to Jesse and his girlfriend. It was their knife from their own home. Jesse used that knife to slash Nina's throat. He cut her throat with the blade. Nina died from that wound. After she was dead, Jesse searched through her house. He ransacked the home. That means he opened drawers, threw things around, and looked for money or valuables. He did not find any money, or if he did, the records do not say. He left the butcher knife lying next to Nina's body. Then Jesse went back to his own house. He did something strange. He called the police in the early morning hours of July 8th. He told them that his own house had been burglarized. That means broken into and robbed. He said someone had kicked in his back door. He asked the police to come and investigate. When the police arrived at Jesse's house, no one was home. Jesse and his girlfriend and their baby were not there. The police looked around the outside of the house. They saw a large rock next to the side of the house. The rock had blood on it. They also saw that the back door had been kicked in. But they did not see anyone inside. So they left. Later that same day, Nina's body was discovered. Her sister, who was 78 years old, lived next door. The sister went to check on Nina. She found Nina's body on the bedroom floor. Nina was only partly dressed. Her throat was cut. The sister called the police. When the police came to Nina's house, they saw the open bathroom window with the screen pried loose. They found the rusty butcher knife next to the body. They saw the bruises and the twisted arm. They collected evidence from the scene. That evidence included hairs, the knife, and samples from Nina's body. The police then started asking neighbors questions. They went to Jesse's house 2 doors away. They talked to Jesse's girlfriend. She looked at the butcher knife found in Nina's house. She told the police that the knife looked like the one she and Jesse owned. She said it was theirs. The police also looked at the outside of Nina's bathroom window. They found a partial palm print on the window sill. That print had been left by someone who pushed on the sill while climbing in. They also collected 3 hairs from the scene. At this time, no one had been arrested yet. The police began to suspect Jesse, but they did not take him into custody immediately. Jesse was still free. After the police talked to Jesse's girlfriend and found the palm print on Nina's window, they decided to search Jesse's house. They obtained a search warrant. A search warrant is a legal paper that allows police to enter a home and look for evidence. The police searched Jesse's house on the day after Nina's body was found. Inside his home, they found several important items. First, they found a man's sock that was soaked with dried blood. Second, they found wadded-up toilet tissues that also had dried blood on them. Third, they found an old pair of men's denim jeans with suspicious stains that looked like blood. These items were collected as evidence. The police sent the sock and the toilet tissue to a laboratory for testing. Scientists analyzed the blood. They found that the genetic markers in the blood on the sock matched the genetic markers in Nina's blood. Later, more advanced DNA testing was done. The DNA from the sock and the tissues matched the DNA from Nina's blood sample exactly. This meant the blood on those items came from Nina. The police also took the partial palm print from the outside sill of Nina's bathroom window. They compared it to Jesse's palm prints. The print matched Jesse. In addition, the 3 hairs found at the crime scene were compared to Jesse's hair. Those hairs were the same as his. A dentist later examined bite marks found on Nina's arm. The dentist testified that the bite marks matched Jesse's dental impression. The rusty butcher knife found next to Nina's body was identified by Jesse's girlfriend as belonging to both of them. She told the police that the knife came from their own home. Now the police had enough evidence to arrest Jesse. However, Jesse was no longer in Pleasant Grove, Texas. He had left town. On July 22, 1989, which was 2 weeks after the murder, police tracked him to Jackson, Mississippi. He was staying at his sister's home there. When the officers arrived at the house, they searched for him. They found Jesse hiding under a bed. He was arrested on the spot. Then he was brought back to Texas to face charges. Shortly after his arrest, Jesse gave a written confession. In that confession, he said he had been drinking before the killing. He wrote that he broke into Nina's house and tried to have sex with her, but could not. He wrote that he slit her throat with the knife. Then he added, "I don't really remember cutting her throat." Later, He changed his mind and said he did not mean the confession. He recanted, which means he took back what he said. But the confession was kept as evidence. Jesse was charged with capital murder. Capital murder means murder that happens at the same time as another serious crime. In this case, the other serious crime was burglary, breaking into Nina's home, and also sexual assault. The trial took place in Dallas County, Texas, in the 282nd District Court. The trial began. The prosecutors showed the jury all the evidence: the bloody sock, the bloody tissues, the palm print, the hairs, the bite mark matching, the knife identified by the girlfriend, and the confession. They also called 3 women who testified that Jesse had either assaulted or raped them in a drunken rage before. Those women were not related to Nina's case, but their testimony was allowed to show that Jesse had a pattern of violent behavior. The jury did not take long to decide. They deliberated for about 50 minutes. Then they found Jesse Joe Patrick guilty of capital murder. After the guilty verdict, the same jury had to decide the punishment: life in prison or the death penalty. They heard more evidence. They deliberated for less than 45 minutes. They decided that Jesse should receive the death sentence. The judge formally sentenced him to death on April 16, 1990. After the sentence, Jesse spent years appealing. An appeal is a request for a higher court to review the case. He filed an appeal with the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. That court upheld his conviction and death sentence on June 28, 1995. He then asked the United States Supreme Court to hear his case, but on March 25, 1996, the Supreme Court refused. He also filed a state habeas corpus petition, which was denied on April 22, 1998. A federal habeas petition was denied on August 23, 2000. In 2001, Texas passed a new law that allowed some convicted people to request DNA testing on evidence. Jesse asked for DNA testing on the sperm found in Nina's body. He said he did not remember the crime and wanted to know for his own peace of mind. A state district judge, Karen Green, said Jesse did not qualify for a free test because the evidence against him was already very strong. However, she allowed him to pay for the test himself using private money. Jesse's wife, Hester, a British woman he married by proxy in 1997, raised the money. But the Dallas County District Attorney's Office opposed the test. They appealed to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. On September 11, 2002, the Court of Criminal Appeals ruled that the test could not go forward. They said Jesse did not meet the requirements of the new law, and it did not matter that he was willing to pay. On September 12, 2002, the United States Supreme Court denied Jesse's final appeal. His motion for a stay of execution was also denied that same day. On September 17, 2002, Jesse Joe Patrick was executed by lethal injection in Huntsville, Texas. He was 44 years old. He did not ask for a final meal. He made no final statement. He smiled and nodded to his wife and relatives as they watched through a window. The drugs were given at 6:10 p.m. He was pronounced dead at 6:17 p.m. After the execution, Nina Rutherford Redd's family released a statement. They said their prayers were for the Patrick family during their time of grief. They said they had waited 13 years for justice to be done. The story of Jesse Joe Patrick ends with his death by lethal injection on September 17, 2002. Story 5. Ron Scott Schamberger was born on November 11, 1971. He was born in Longview, Texas. Longview is a city in the eastern part of the state. His parents were DeSelle Schamberger and Linnell Schamberger. They raised Ron in a Christian home. The family went to church every week. Ron attended Sunday services and Bible study classes from a young age. As a child, Ron was a good student. He did well in his schoolwork. He also joined the Boy Scouts. He worked hard in the Scouts. He reached the rank of Eagle Scout. This is the highest rank a boy can earn in scouting. To become an Eagle Scout, he had to complete many difficult requirements and show leadership. Ron graduated from high school. He then went to Texas A&M University in College Station, Texas. He wanted to study biomedical science. Biomedical science is the study of how the human body works and how to treat diseases. During his freshman year at Texas A&M, Ron met a young woman named Lori Baker. She was also a freshman. They went dancing together one time. After that, they did not see each other very often. They were acquaintances, not close friends. Years passed without them talking much. Ron continued his studies at the university. He became a fifth-year senior. That meant he had been in college for 5 years. He was close to earning his degree in biomedical science. While in school, he worked part-time at a supermarket. He also thought about his future. He considered applying to pharmacy school. He also thought about going to a Baptist seminary to become a minister. Ron had no criminal record. He had never been arrested before. To his family and friends, he seemed like a normal young man. He was polite and quiet. He went to church. He studied hard. Nothing about his early life showed what he would do later. In the summer of 1994, Ron ran into Lori Baker on campus. They had not seen each other in a long time. They talked briefly. He asked her out on a date a couple of times. She said no each time. She told him she was in an exclusive relationship with someone else. Ron accepted this. They remained friendly acquaintances. Around this same time, Ron found a credit card at the supermarket where he worked. Someone had left it behind. Instead of reporting the lost card to his manager, he took it home. He used it to buy things for himself. Then he got rid of the card. This was the first time he had done something illegal. He felt a rush of excitement from not getting caught. After that, Ron started thinking about stealing more credit cards. He began breaking into houses in College Station. He looked for cash and credit cards. He did this many times over the summer and early fall of 1994. No one caught him. No one saw him. He broke into some homes more than once. He later said it became like an obsession. He enjoyed the feeling of getting away with it. One of the homes he thought about breaking into was Lori Baker's house. She lived in a duplex with a roommate named Victoria Kohler. Ron knew where she lived because they had been acquaintances for years. He went to her neighborhood on several occasions. On August 2nd, 1994, Ron drove to Lori Baker's neighborhood. He planned to break into her home, but at the last moment, he chose a different house instead. He broke into the home of Sandra King, who lived next door to Lori. He stole cash and a credit card from Sandra King's house. The next day, he used the stolen credit card to buy things for himself. Later that same month, Ron purchased a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. He bought it from a store. He did not have any legal reason to own a gun. He bought it because he wanted it for his burglaries. On September 21st, 1994, Ron tried again to break into Lori's home. He could not get inside, so he broke into another neighbor's house instead. He used a knife to cut the window screen. He stole more cash and credit cards. He immediately started using the stolen credit cards to make purchases. On either September 26th or September 27th, Ron finally succeeded in breaking into Lori Baker's home. He entered while she was not there. He stole a credit card that belonged to Lori. He also stole a pair of her underwear. He took these items and left. On September 28th, Ron used Lori's stolen credit card to buy clothing for himself. The store accepted the card. No one stopped him. On September 30th, 1994, Ron went to a store and used Lori's credit card again. This time he bought a gas can and gasoline. He put the gas can in his car. He also had his pistol and a roll of duct tape with him. He drove to Lori's home. It was very early in the morning. The sun had not come up yet. Ron parked his car near Lori's duplex. He carried the gun, the duct tape, and the gas can. He went to a window in a spare bedroom. He forced the window open and climbed inside. The room was empty. He walked through the house to Lori's bedroom. Her door was locked. He broke the lock on her bedroom door. He opened the door and went inside. Lori was asleep in her bed. He stood over her. She woke up. She saw his face in the darkness. She recognized him immediately. She knew who he was. Ron then used the duct tape to bind Lori's hands together. She could not move her hands. She was trapped in her own bed. At that moment, Lori's roommate, Victoria Kohler, came back to the duplex. Victoria was 20 years old. She had been out and was returning home. She walked into the house. She did not know anything was wrong at first. Ron heard Victoria enter the house. He knew someone else was there. He placed the pistol directly against Lori's head. Then he pulled the trigger. He shot her once. The bullet entered her head. She died instantly. Victoria walked through the house to make sure everything was secure. She heard noises coming from Lori's bedroom and from the bathroom. She walked toward the back of the house. Then she saw Ron. She screamed and tried to run away, but Ron grabbed her by her hair. He threw her to the floor. He sat on her back so she could not breathe well. He poked the gun against her back. He told her, "Don't move, don't scream or it will be over." Then Ron started asking Victoria many questions. He asked her name. He asked what she was studying in school. He asked if she had class the next day. He asked if her professor would call the roll. He asked if she was a Christian. He asked if she had a boyfriend. He asked if she had cash or credit cards. He asked if her credit card could be used at a cash machine. He went to her bedroom and took $6 from her wallet. He said, "Sweet, good bull, $6. He sat on her back again. He began to massage her shoulders. He kept asking questions. He asked if she was a virgin. He told her he had never had sex with a woman. He said, "I don't want to hurt you." He also said, "I bet your heart is beating really fast and I bet you're scared." Then he asked Victoria if she had seen his face. She had clearly seen him in the hallway, but she lied. She gave him a false description of herself. She pretended she could not really identify him. Ron believed her. He covered her head with a blanket. He made her crawl into the bathroom. He used duct tape to bind her hands behind her back. He left her in the bathroom for some time. Then he took her to the garage. He removed the tape from her hands. He locked her inside the trunk of her own car. He came back about 10 minutes later. He told her he was going to take her somewhere and drop her off. He drove the car around town. He talked to Victoria through the back seat. He said, "I guess you know Lori is dead. I guess there is a first time for everything." He said he knew the police would eventually find him. He asked her if she thought he should kill himself. She told him no. He asked if anyone could forgive him. She told him, "The Lord forgives." He told her he was planning to burn the house to destroy the evidence. He asked if there was anything in the house she wanted to save. She said her scrapbooks and pictures. He said he would save them. Then he stopped the car. He unlocked the trunk. He told her not to leave the trunk until she heard sirens or until she could not stand it anymore. He said not to get out right away because he might be watching her. Then he walked away. Victoria stayed in the trunk for a while to make sure he was gone. Then she climbed out. She drove to a nearby house. She asked the people there to call 911. Meanwhile, Ron walked back to Lori's house. He found Victoria's scrapbooks and placed them on the floor of her room. Then he went to his own car, which was still parked outside. He took the gas can out of his car. He brought it inside. Then he decided to try to find the bullet he had shot into Lori's head. He did not want the police to find it. They could trace the bullet back to his gun. He moved Lori's body and the headboard of the bed. He searched for the bullet. He cut some of Lori's hair. Then he used a knife to poke into the exit wound on the back of her head. He tried to dig the bullet out. He could not find it. He gave up. He poured gasoline over Lori's body. He poured gasoline all over her bedroom. He placed his hat on the bed because it was covered with blood and brain matter. Then he lit the fire. The room caught fire quickly. The fire spread. The house eventually exploded from the heat and flames. As the fire grew, Ron realized he had lost his car keys. They had fallen out of his shirt pocket somewhere inside the burning house. He tried to go back inside to find them. He could not. He got slightly burned in the attempt. He walked outside to the backyard. Lori's brother, Mark Baker, lived next door. He heard the explosion. He came outside to see what happened. He saw smoke pouring out of the back of Lori's house. He grabbed a baseball bat and started smashing Lori's bedroom window. He called out his sister's name. Then he heard a voice from the backyard. The voice said, "She's dead." It was Ron. Ron was walking in circles in the middle of the yard. He was holding the gun. He kept saying, "She's dead." He turned and started walking toward Mark. Mark ran back inside his own house and locked the door. Ron then walked to a store. He bought a Coke and bottled water. He called a man named Steve Biles. Steve Biles was a minister at Ron's church. He was also Ron's personal friend. Ron asked Steve to meet him. Steve came. They drove around for a while. Then Ron confessed everything to Steve. He told him about the burglaries, the shooting, the fire. Steve listened. Then Steve took Ron to get his Bible. After that, they drove to the College Station police station. While Ron was driving with Steve Biles to the police station, other events were already taking place. Victoria Kohler had climbed out of the car trunk and gone to a nearby house. The people in that house called 911. Police and firefighters were sent to Lori Baker's address. Mark Baker, Lori's brother, had run back into his own house after seeing Ron in the backyard with the gun. Mark called 911 as well. He told the operator that his sister's house was on fire and that a man with a gun was in the yard. Firefighters arrived at the duplex. They saw the house burning. The fire was very hot and the house had already exploded from the gasoline. They worked to put out the flames. Inside, they found Lori Baker's body. She had been shot in the head. She had also been burned. It was clear that she was dead before the fire started. Police officers arrived and began investigating. They talked to Victoria Kohler. She told them everything that had happened. She described the man who had attacked her. She gave them the false description she had made up, but she also told them the truth about what he said and did. She was very scared, but she was not physically hurt. Police also talked to Mark Baker. He told them about the man in the backyard who said she's dead and walked toward him with a gun. Mark described the man. The description matched Victoria's true description of the man she had seen. While all this was happening, Ron and Steve Biles arrived at the College Station police station. Ron wanted to turn himself in, but when they walked inside, there were no officers available. All the officers were out at the fire scene. Ron and Steve sat in the lobby and waited. While they were waiting, Ron took out his pistol. He started flicking bullets from the gun onto the floor. The bullets made noise. Someone at the station noticed. They called for officers to return. Officers came back to the station. They saw Ron holding the gun. They ordered everyone in the room to get down on the floor. Ron did not resist. He put the gun down. He was arrested. After his arrest, Ron was taken to an interview room. Police officers read him his rights. He agreed to talk. He gave a full confession. He told them about all the burglaries he had committed. He told them about breaking into Lori's home. He told them about shooting her when he heard Victoria come in. He told them about tying up Victoria and putting her in the trunk. He told them about trying to find the bullet with a knife. He told them about setting the fire. He said he did not plan to kill anyone when he broke into the house. But he admitted he brought the gun so he could try to fight my way out or something if he got caught. The police collected evidence. They found the duct tape. They found the gas can. They found the knife Ron had used on Lori's head wound. They found the gun. Ballistics tests matched the bullet fragments from Lori's body to Ron's pistol. The credit card records showed that Ron had used Lori's stolen card to buy the gas can and gasoline on the day of the murder. Ron was charged with capital murder. The charge was capital murder because he killed Lori Baker while committing or trying to commit burglary of a home. In Texas, this is a capital offense. That means the death penalty can be given. The trial took place in Brazos County, Texas, in October 1995. The prosecutor was Bill Turner, the Brazos County District Attorney. Ron's lawyers argued that he did not plan to kill Lori. They said he went to burglarize the house, not to murder anyone. They said the shooting was a panic reaction when he heard Victoria come home. The prosecution presented all the evidence. They showed that Ron brought a gun, duct tape, and a gas can. They showed that he tried to dig the bullet out of Lori's head with a knife. They argued this showed he was cold and calculating. They said he would be a danger to society in the future if he was not executed. The jury found Ron Scott Schamberger guilty of capital murder on October 19, 1995. Then the same jury heard evidence about the punishment. In Texas, when a defendant is convicted of capital murder, the jury must answer 3 special questions. If they answer yes to all 3, the judge must sentence the person to death. The jury answered yes. The judge sentenced Ron to death by lethal injection. After the sentence, Ron was sent to death row in Livingston, Texas. He spent 7 years there. His lawyers filed appeals. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals upheld his conviction and sentence in October 1998. The United States Supreme Court refused to hear his case in June 1999. He filed more appeals in state and federal court. All of them were denied. On September 6, 2002, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected his final request for a stay of execution. On September 18, 2002, Ron Scott Schamberger was executed by lethal injection at the state penitentiary in Huntsville, Texas. His last meal was nachos with chili and cheese, a bowl of sliced jalapenos, a bowl of picante sauce, 2 large sliced and grilled onions, tacos with fresh tomatoes, lettuce and cheese, and toasted corn tortilla shells. Before the lethal drugs were given, he quoted from the Bible. He looked at Lori Baker's family and said he was sorry. He asked for their forgiveness. He apologized to his own parents. Then he sang an old religious hymn called, "How Can It Be?" The drugs entered his body. He was pronounced dead at 6:17 p.m. He was 30 years old. Lori Baker's family continued to live with their loss. Her mother, Faye Baker, said they had forgiven Ron because of their Christian faith, but the pain of losing a daughter never went away. Victoria Kohler survived and went on with her life. Ron's parents mourned their son. The case was closed. Ron Scott Schamberger took a young woman's life during a burglary, and for that crime, the state of Texas took his. Story 6. Rex Warren Mays was born on January 21, 1960. He was a white male. He grew up in a troubled home. His father was an alcoholic. His father could not hold a job for very long. His mother was also abusive. She would beat Rex for small reasons. One of his aunts later said that his mother would beat him just for breathing. Violence was normal in his house. His parents solved problems by hitting or yelling. Rex learned from a young age that anger and violence were okay ways to deal with frustration. As a child, Rex did not have a stable home life. His family moved often. He did not feel loved or safe. He had trouble making friends. He did not learn good ways to control his emotions. When he got upset, he did not know how to calm down. He kept these problems as he grew older. Rex finished school. He did not go to college. He started looking for work. He had many different jobs over the years. He could not keep any job for a long time. He would get fired or he would quit. His work history was not stable. He also worked as a part-time clown. He performed at children's birthday parties. He used the name, Oh the Clown. He dressed in clown clothes and made children laugh. He liked the attention he got when he was the clown. Rex also joined the United States Marines at some point. He learned combat techniques there. He learned how to use knives and how to fight. He left the Marines after some time. He did not talk much about his time in the service. Rex got married. His wife did not know about his deep anger problems at first. But over time, the marriage had problems. Rex lost jobs again and again. He could not provide steady money. His wife became upset with him. She left him more than once. They would separate and then get back together. This pattern continued for years. Rex felt like a failure. He worried about what his wife thought of him. He was afraid to tell her when he lost another job. Rex and his wife moved into a rented house on a street called Fair Forest in Harris County, Texas. This was in a suburban neighborhood. They lived next door to a family named Wiley. The Wiley family had a daughter named Kristen, who was 10 years old in 1992. They also had a son named Jeremy, who was 14. Rex did not have any criminal record at this time. He had never been arrested or charged with a crime before. The neighbors did not know much about him. Some neighbors thought he was strange. One neighbor, who was black, noticed that Rex often told stories about seeing strange black men on the street. The neighbor did not believe these stories. He thought Rex made things up to get attention. Rex continued to struggle with work. He continued to drink too much alcohol. His marriage remained unstable. He felt angry and helpless much of the time. He did not know how to handle rejection or disrespect. Small things could make him very upset. He kept these feelings inside. He did not get help for his anger. He did not talk to a counselor or a doctor. He just kept going from job to job, from fight to fight with his wife. He lived next door to children. He sometimes watched them play, but no one knew what was building inside him. On the morning of July 20th, 1992, Rex went to work. He did not know that this day would change everything, but that part of the story comes next. On the morning of July 20th, 1992, Rex Warren Mays went to work as usual. He was employed by a company that had a contract with Exxon. Sometime during that day, his boss fired him. Rex lost his job. He left his workplace at about 2:45 in the afternoon. He was very upset. He was also worried. He did not know how to tell his wife that he had been fired again. He knew she would be angry. He felt like a failure. Rex got into his car and drove home toward Fair Forest Street. But he did not park in his own driveway. Instead, he parked his car a few houses down the street from his house. He got out and walked. He was still thinking about what to say to his wife. As he walked toward his house, he passed by the Wiley home. This was the house next door to his. Inside that house, two young girls were playing. The first girl was Kristen Wiley. She was 10 years old. She was white. She lived in that house with her family. The second girl was Kenara Carriero. She was 7 years old. She was white. She was Kristen's best friend. Kenara had spent the night at Kristen's house. They had played together all morning and early afternoon. Earlier that day, Kenara had gone back to her own house for a while. Then her mother gave her permission to go back to Kristen's house to help with chores. The girls were supposed to clean up. Instead, they were playing music. As Rex walked past the Wiley house, he heard loud music coming from inside. The music was coming from an upstairs bedroom. Rex decided to go inside. The front door was not locked. He pushed it open and walked in. He called out for Kristen by name. He knew her because she was his neighbor. Rex walked through the house. He went upstairs. He saw Kristen and Kenara. The girls saw him and started running away from him. They were scared or surprised. Rex followed them. He caught up to them and asked them to turn down the stereo. He wanted them to lower the volume of the music. Kenara answered him. She said, "No, we're not going to turn it down. Just get out of the house." Rex became very angry. He later said that he thought to himself, "Here I had just gotten fired and some kids telling me no." He felt disrespected. He could not control his anger. He decided to hurt the girls. Rex went into the kitchen of the Wiley home. He found a knife. He took the knife and went back to where the girls were. He began stabbing them. He stabbed Kristen. He stabbed Kinara. He did not stop. He stabbed both girls many times. Kristen was stabbed 18 times. Kinara was stabbed 23 times. Many of the stab wounds were to their necks and heads. Both girls also had wounds to their eyes. Rex stabbed them in the eyes so they could not look at him. Both girls also had trauma to their vaginal areas, but no semen was found on their bodies. The girls tried to run or fight back, but they could not escape. They both died from the stab wounds. Their throats were cut. Their carotid arteries were cut. They drowned in their own blood. When Rex was sure the girls were dead, he needed to leave the house. He did not want to be seen. He crawled out of the house through a window. This window led to the backyard. He started to climb over the privacy fence that separated the Wiley yard from his own yard. But then he remembered something. His car was parked down the street, not in his own driveway. If he went home through his own backyard, his car would still be parked far away. Someone might notice. So Rex went back into the Wiley house through the same window. He walked through the house and went out the front door. He walked down the street to where his car was parked. He brought the knife with him. He also had blood on his shirt. He put the knife and the bloody shirt into a duffel bag that he kept in his car. Then Rex drove home. He parked his car in his own garage. He went inside his house. He told his wife that he had been fired from his job. Then he took a shower. Blood had splattered onto his legs during the stabbings. He washed the blood off his body. After he cleaned himself, Rex acted like a normal neighbor. He went outside. He sat on a lawn chair in his driveway. He drank a soda. He watched as emergency vehicles arrived. The bodies of the two girls had been found. A 14-year-old boy named Jeremy Garza, who was Kristen's brother, had found them. He had walked into his bedroom and seen the girls lying face down on a blood-soaked bed. They were only wearing t-shirts. They were naked from the waist down. Jeremy ran out screaming. His friends came in to look. Someone called 911. The police and ambulances came. Rex watched all of this from his driveway. The mother of the victims came to his door. She needed to use a telephone. Rex let her use his phone. He also invited several police officers into his house. He offered them refreshments. He wanted to seem helpful. He wanted to look like a concerned neighbor. Later that night, Rex went to sleep. The next day, July 21st, 1992, he washed the clothes he had worn during the murders. He washed them in a washing machine to remove the blood. He threw the knife into a nearby ravine. He put the duffel bag in the garbage to be thrown away. But blood traces remained on his laundered clothing. Scientists would later find DNA on those clothes. That DNA would match the DNA of the two dead girls. Crime scene investigators also found blood on the privacy fence between Rex's yard and the Wiley yard. That blood came from the victims. For now, no one arrested Rex. He continued to live in his house. He continued to talk to the police. He told them a story. He said he had seen two men jumping over his fence. He said one man was black and one man was Hispanic. He helped a police artist draw a picture of the black suspect. The police spent time looking for these men, but Rex had made the whole story up. He lied to hide what he had done. The investigation would take many more months, but the crime itself was finished. Two young girls were dead. Rex Warren Mays had killed them with a kitchen knife because he was angry about losing his job and because a 7-year-old girl told him no. The bodies of Kristen Wiley and Kinara Carriero were found on the afternoon of July 20th, 1992. The police arrived quickly. They began asking questions. Rex Mays acted like a helpful neighbor. He told the police that he had seen two men jump over his fence. He said one man was black and one was Hispanic. The police believed him at first. They spent time looking for these two men. They made a drawing of the black suspect based on what Rex described. This sent the investigation in the wrong direction. 3 days later, On July 23, 1992, the police asked Rex to take a polygraph test. A polygraph test measures if a person is lying. Rex agreed to take the test. He took it once. He failed. He took it a second time. He failed again. The police told him he had failed. Then Rex admitted that he had lied about the two men. He said he made up the whole story. There were no men jumping over the fence. After this, the police stopped looking for the two men. They started looking at Rex as the main suspect. But at that time, the police did not have enough evidence to arrest Rex. They had no confession to the murders. They had no physical proof that he was inside the Wiley house. The blood on the fence was tested for blood type, which made it useless as a fingerprint. The police searched Rex's house twice with his permission, but they did not find the knife or the bloody clothes. Rex had already washed the clothes and thrown the knife away, so the police let Rex stay free. He remained a suspect, but he was not arrested. For the next 19 months, a detective named Bob Valerio from the Harris County Sheriff's Department worked on the case. Detective Valerio did not give up. He became friends with Rex. He drank with Rex. He went to topless bars with Rex. He even let Rex come with him on official police business. The detective did all of this to build trust. He hoped that Rex would eventually confess. Meanwhile, the families of the victims were also watching. Bob Carrero, Kenara's father, became very active. He appeared in the news often. He and his friends followed Rex around. They drove by his house. They rode motorcycles past his home. They followed him to events where he performed as O the Clown. Bob Carrero even approached a woman who was dating Rex and told her that Rex was a suspect in the murder of 2 children. This constant attention made Rex nervous. He changed his appearance several times. He started using his first name Randy instead of Rex. The pressure on him grew. In late 1993, around Christmas, Rex started dropping hints to the police. He said his conscience was bothering him. He said he might want to confess. The detectives kept working with him at his own pace. They did not push too hard. They wanted him to feel safe enough to tell the truth. On February 10, 1994, Detective Valerio asked Rex to come to his office to talk about the case. Rex agreed. He went to the office. The interrogation room was filled with photographs of the 2 dead girls, pictures of their homes, and newspaper clippings about the murders. Rex sat down and began talking. He talked for 4 hours. At the end, he gave a written confession. The confession was 6 pages long. It was very detailed. He explained everything: how he parked down the street, how he entered the unlocked door, how the girls ran from him, how Kenara told him no, how he got the knife from the kitchen, and how he stabbed them both. He also told the police where to find the knife. The police went to the ravine he described. They found a steak knife on the edge of a bayou near the Taylor house. By the time they found it, no blood or fingerprints remained on the knife. But the fact that Rex knew exactly where to find it confirmed his confession was true. After the confession, the police arrested Rex Warren Mays. He was charged with capital murder. On April 12, 1994, he was indicted by a grand jury. He pleaded not guilty. The trial began on September 5, 1995, in the 176th District Court of Harris County, Texas. The prosecutors presented the evidence: Rex's confession, the DNA from his laundered clothes that matched the victims, the blood on the fence, and his lies to the police. An FBI behavioral analyst named Alan Brantley testified that Rex was a continuing threat to society. He said that children made Rex feel strong emotions of anger and sexuality. The defense argued that Rex had a terrible childhood, with an alcoholic father and an abusive mother. They said violence was normal to him. They asked the jury to spare his life. On September 12, 1995, the jury returned a verdict. They found Rex Warren Mays guilty of capital murder. Then came the punishment hearing. The jury had to decide between death and life in prison. They answered yes to the question of whether Rex would be a future danger to society. They found no good reason to give him life instead of death. On September 18, 1995, the trial judge sentenced Rex Mays to death by lethal injection. Rex appealed his case. He argued that his confession should not be allowed because the interrogation room was designed to pressure him. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals sent the case back to the trial court to look at that issue. The trial court said the confession was voluntary. Rex was not under arrest when he confessed. He came to the office on his own, so the confession was allowed. The Court of Criminal Appeals agreed. They upheld his conviction and death sentence in October 1998. The United States Supreme Court refused to hear his case on October 12, 1999. Rex filed more appeals in federal court, but all were denied. His last appeal was denied by the Supreme Court on September 12, 2002. On September 24, 2002, Rex Warren Mays was executed by lethal injection at the Walls Unit in Huntsville, Texas. He was 42 years old. His final meal was 6 scrambled eggs with shredded cheese, cream gravy, hash browns, pan sausage, orange juice, and milk. His final words were a prayer. He said, "Warden, just give me parole and let me go home to be with the Lord." He also said he was going to a better place. The lethal drugs were injected at 6:11 p.m. He coughed once and let out a long sputter. He was pronounced dead at 6:19 p.m. Bob Carrero, the father of Kenara, watched the execution. He said later that it was much too easy for what Rex had done. The Wiley family did not make a statement. After the execution, members of a victims advocacy group released 17 pink balloons and 2 Barbie balloons into the sky in memory of the 2 girls. Rex Warren Mays became the 800th person executed in the United States since the death penalty was restored in 1976, and the 2 young girls he killed never got to grow up. Story 7. Robert Anthony Buell was born on September 10, 1940. He was born in Norwood, Ohio. Norwood is a city near Cincinnati. His family lived there. He had a mother named Ola. He had a sister named Carol. His family was not rich. They were a normal working family. Robert went to school in Norwood. He attended Norwood High School. He was not a star student. He did not cause major problems in school. He finished high school like most other kids. After high school, he decided to join the United States Navy. He served in the Navy for some time. He did not stay in the Navy for his whole career. He left the Navy and returned to civilian life. After the Navy, Robert got married. He moved to a different part of Ohio. He settled in the northeast part of the state. He lived in a town called Clinton. Clinton is near Akron. He got a job with the city of Akron. He worked in the planning department. His job title was loan specialist. He helped with city planning and loans. He kept this job for many years. People who worked with him did not see him as strange or dangerous. He looked like a normal man. Robert had a daughter. She was born around 1965. He was a father. He tried to live a normal life. But over time, his behavior changed. He started using drugs. He also started drinking alcohol heavily. He drank so much that he would have blackouts. A blackout means a person drinks so much that they cannot remember what happened while they were drunk. Robert's sister later said that he would wake up in strange places. He did not know how he got there. He did not know what he had done during the blackout. His family noticed these changes. His sister became worried about him. She started to drift away from him. They did not talk as much. The drugs and alcohol made him different. He was no longer the brother she knew as a child. But at this time, no one knew that he would commit serious crimes. He was just a man with a drinking problem and a drug problem. People saw him as troubled, not as a killer. Robert kept working at the city planning department. He kept living in Clinton. He had a van. He He had a house. He lived alone or with his family at different times. He continued to drink. He continued to use drugs. His habits got worse. He would have angry moments. He would have confused moments. But he did not get arrested for violent crimes during these early years. He was just a man whose life was falling apart slowly. His daughter grew up. He stayed in his job. He stayed in his house in Clinton. He did not talk much about his past. He did not tell people about his Navy service. He kept to himself. People in his neighborhood saw him as quiet. They did not see him as friendly or unfriendly. He was just there. The drugs and alcohol continued to affect his mind. He began to have thoughts and urges that were not normal. He did not tell anyone about these thoughts. He kept them secret. He continued to go to work. He continued to live his daily life. No one saw the danger growing inside him. No one reported him to the police. No one thought he would hurt anyone. Then, in 1981 and 1982, things started to change. His behavior became more strange. But that part of the story belongs to the crimes. For now, Robert Buell was still a city worker. He was still living in Clinton. He was still drinking. He was still using drugs. He was still having blackouts. And he was still hiding his dark thoughts from everyone around him. That is where his early life ended. The next part of his life would involve actions that he could not take back. Robert Buell continued his life in Clinton, Ohio. He went to work at the Akron Planning Department. He drank alcohol. He used drugs. He had blackouts. But in 1981 and 1982, his secret urges turned into real actions. He began to hurt women and girls. The first known crime happened in 1981. Buell abducted a 29-year-old woman from Chester, West Virginia. Chester is across the state line from Ohio. He took her to his home in Clinton, Ohio. He kept her in his house as a prisoner. He held her there for 3 days. During those 3 days, he raped her. He did not let her leave. After 3 days, he released her in Pennsylvania. She survived. She later told the police what happened. 5 months after that crime, Buell struck again. This time the victim was a 28-year-old woman from Columbiana County, Ohio. Columbiana County is near the Pennsylvania border. Buell abducted her at gunpoint. He pointed a gun at her and forced her to go with him. He took her to his home in Franklin Township, Summit County, Ohio. Summit County is where Clinton is located. Once inside his home, he handcuffed her to his bed. He then raped her. He also tortured her. She was trapped in his house. But she did not give up. She found a way to escape. She ran to a neighbor's house. The neighbor helped her. She was safe. But she was badly hurt by what Buell had done to her. These 2 crimes were serious. But Buell did not stop. He committed an even worse crime on July 17, 1982. That day was a Saturday. The weather was warm. In the village of Marshallville, Ohio, an 11-year-old girl named Krista Leah Harrison was playing outside. Marshallville is a small village in Wayne County. Krista lived on one side of the street. Across the street from her house was a park. She went to that park with a boy her age. They were collecting aluminum cans. People would return cans for money. It was a normal thing for kids to do on a summer day. While Krista was in the park, a man approached her. The boy who was with her later said what happened. The man grabbed Krista. He dragged her. She screamed. The man forced her into a van. The van had a certain look. It was brown or purple. It had teardrop-shaped or bubble-shaped windows. The man drove away with Krista inside. The boy ran to tell adults. People called the police. But the van was already gone. Buell took Krista to a place where no one could see them. He then sexually assaulted her. The autopsy later showed that a rigid object was pushed against the inlet of her vagina. He did not use his own body for the assault. He used an object. After the sexual assault, he strangled her. He used his hands or something around her neck. She stopped breathing. She died. Buell now had a dead child. He had to get rid of the body. He wrapped her body. He used a green garbage bag. He put tape on the bag. He also used a blanket. He wrapped the body in these items. Then he drove to a remote area in Holmes County, Ohio. Holmes County is next to Wayne County. It is rural. There are many cornfields, woods, and dirt roads. He found an old wooden garage or shed. It was off a dirt road. He placed Krista's body there. He left her in the weeds. He also left other items at the scene. He left 2 gloves. He left a clump of hair. He left a blanket. He left the green garbage bag with tape. He left 2 pieces of a cardboard box. The box had a shipping label on it. Buell sprayed black paint over the label so no one could read it. He also left a pair of men's jeans. The jeans had blue and tan paint stains on them. He left a shirt as well. 6 days passed. From July 17th to July 23rd, no one found Krista. Her family and many volunteers searched. The FBI and Ohio National Guard helped. They looked on the ground and from the air. But they did not find her until July 23rd. On that day, someone found her body in that old wooden garage in Holmes County. Her body was badly decomposed because of the summer heat. The flies and insects had already been on her body. The medical examiner later said she had been strangled. She had been sexually assaulted. She was dead. Now, what did people notice at the time? A few things happened in the days after the kidnapping. A neighbor of Buell's later said something strange. The news reports described the kidnapper's van as having teardrop or bubble windows. A day or 2 after that description was on the news, Buell changed the windows on his van. He replaced them with square windows. That was noticed. Also, Buell had bought custom-made van seats from Sears. He picked them up on July 11th, 1982. That was 6 days before Krista was taken. The packaging from those seats was the same type of material used to wrap Krista's body. That was a connection. But at the time, no one connected Buell to Krista's disappearance. He was just another man with a van. During these months, Buell continued to live in Clinton. He continued to go to work. No one arrested him for Krista's murder. The crime went unsolved. The police had no suspect. They had fibers from the crime scene. They had paint from the jeans. They had the van description. But they did not have a name. So the case sat open for 15 months. Meanwhile, Buell did not stop his other crimes. He had already hurt 2 adult women. He would later be linked to other missing girls. Police later suspected him in the death of 12-year-old Tina Marie Harmon. She was abducted on October 29, 1981, from Creston, Ohio. Her body was found 5 days later. She had been raped and strangled. Police also suspected him in the death of 10-year-old Deborah K. Smith. She was abducted from a street carnival in Massillon, Ohio, on June 15, 1983. Her body was found on August 6, 1983. She had been killed. But Buell was never charged with those 2 murders. He was only suspected. For now, in the summer of 1982 and into 1983, Buell was still free. He had killed Krista Harrison. He had raped 2 women. He had possibly killed 2 more girls. But no one had caught him yet. The police did not know his name. The evidence from Krista's body sat in a lab. The carpet fibers were orange. They were rare. The paint stains on the jeans were blue and tan. These things would later be matched to Buell's van and home. But at the time, there was no match because there was no suspect. The crimes were done. Krista was dead. The women were hurt but alive. Buell went back to his normal life. He went to work. He drank. He used drugs. He had blackouts. He had everything. No one around him knew what he had done. For 15 months after Krista Harrison's murder, the case remained unsolved. The police had evidence, but no suspect. That changed in October 1982. Buell abducted a 28-year-old woman from Columbiana County at gunpoint. He handcuffed her to his bed in Summit County and raped her. But this woman escaped. She ran to a neighbor's house. The neighbor called the police. Buell was arrested for that crime. When the police arrested Buell in October 1982, they started looking at him for other crimes. They saw that he matched the description of the man who took Krista. He owned a van. The van had windows that were changed after the kidnapping. The police began to collect evidence. They took carpet fibers from Buell's van. They took carpet fibers from his home. Both had rare orange carpet fibers. The police compared these fibers to the fibers found on Krista's body. The fibers matched. The police also looked at the men's jeans found near Krista's body. Those jeans had blue and tan paint stains. The police took paint samples from Buell's home. The paint from his home matched the paint on the jeans. The jeans and a shirt found at the crime scene were the same size and brand as clothes Buell owned. The police also looked at the cardboard box pieces found at the crime scene. The box had a shipping label that was sprayed over with black paint. The police traced the box. It was the packaging from van seats Buell had picked up at Sears on July 11, 1982. That was 6 days before Krista was taken. On November 15, 1983, a grand jury indicted Buell for the murder of Krista Harrison. He was charged with aggravated murder, sexual penetration, and kidnapping. The trial was moved from Wayne County to Cuyahoga County. The judge moved the trial because the crime had received a lot of news coverage in Wayne County. They wanted a fair jury. The trial started in 1984. It lasted 11 days. The prosecution presented the physical evidence. They showed the carpet fibers. They showed the paint matches. They showed the packaging from the van seats. They showed that Buell changed his van windows after the kidnapping description was on the news. They also brought witnesses who saw a van like Buell's near the park on the day Krista disappeared. During the trial, it came out that some witnesses had been hypnotized before they gave their statements to police. Buell's lawyers said this was wrong. They said hypnosis changed the witnesses' memories. The judge allowed the testimony anyway. The judge ruled that the witnesses were not crucial to the conviction because the physical evidence was so strong. On April 4, 1984, the jury found Robert Buell guilty on all counts. The jury then recommended the death penalty. On April 11, 1984, the trial judge agreed with the jury. He sentenced Buell to death. Before the murder trial, Buell had already been sentenced for his other crimes. He pleaded no contest to the rape and kidnapping of the 28-year-old woman who escaped. He also pleaded no contest to the rape and kidnapping of the 29-year-old woman from West Virginia. For those crimes, he was sentenced to 121 years in prison. He was already in prison when he went on trial for Krista's murder. After the death sentence, Buell appealed. He appealed many times over 18 years. The Ohio Court of Appeals denied his appeal. The Ohio Supreme Court rejected his appeal on February 7, 1992. He filed a petition in federal court. On October 7, 1986, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear his appeal. He filed more appeals. On January 22, 1996, Buell was taken to the death house at the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility near Lucasville. He ate a last meal. He waited. But at 12:18 a.m. on January 23, 1996, the U.S. Supreme Court granted a stay of execution by a 5-4 vote. He was sent back to death row. More appeals followed. On July 22, 1999, a federal district court denied his habeas corpus petition. On December 4, 2001, the 6th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals also denied his appeal. Finally, the Ohio Supreme Court set a new execution date for September 25, 2002. The Ohio Parole Board reviewed Buell's case. They unanimously recommended that the governor not grant clemency. Governor Bob Taft agreed. On September 24, 2002, Governor Taft denied clemency. He said the brutality of the crime and Buell's failure to accept responsibility outweighed any reason to spare his life. On September 24th, 2002, Buell ate his final meal at 4:06 p.m. He asked for a single black olive with the pit still inside. Prison officials did not understand the meaning of this request. That evening, he listened to classical music in his cell. The next morning, September 25th, 2002, he woke up at 3:30 a.m. He ate breakfast, bran flakes, and a glass of milk. At 10 a.m., he was taken to the death chamber. He was given a lethal injection. Before the drugs were given, he made a final statement. He looked at Krista's parents, Jerry and Shirley Harrison, who were watching. He said he did not kill their daughter. He said the prosecutor knew that. He said the real killer was still free. He asked them to keep looking for the truth. Then the drugs were given. At 10:30 a.m., Robert Anthony Buell was pronounced dead. After his death, Buell's name remained connected to other unsolved murders of young girls, but no one else was ever charged. Krista Leah Harrison's family continued to believe Buell was guilty. The case was closed. Robert Buell was buried. The 121-year sentence for his other crimes became irrelevant. And the story of Robert Anthony Buell ended on that September morning in Lucasville, Ohio.